Alright, and welcome back to Zero Cool Gaming, and today we're going to be doing a review of a video game called Ghostbusters.
Fred in your basement or attic.
Have you or your family actually seen a spook, specter, or ghost?
If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute.
Just pick up the phone and call the professionals.
Call the Ghostbusters. We're ready to believe you.
Franchises available soon. Call for details.
Whoa! Russell, hey man.
You near the East Wing?
Yep.
By the new Ghoster exhibit?
Yeah, why?
There's something headed your way.
Wait. I hear something. I'm gonna take a look.
Want to hear something really creepy? I was reading about Shandor, you know, the guy who donated most of the Gozer stuff. He was into the occult, you know, supernatural. Weird dude.
Well, why don't we talk about it some other time? Any other time. Hey, you can't be in here. Stop!
Dramatic convulsion, level 7 or more.
Agreed. We need EMF measurement checks now.
Alright, so, a long time ago,
I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask anyway.
I played a video game called Ghostbusters, and it was made for the Commodore 64,
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say.
and I ended up playing it on a Commodore Amiga.
We're about to get real busy.
I actually had 3 drives for that system. I had a
And that is not the fun
cassette
kind of getting busy.
tape drive,
Is it, Rick?
I had
Look
a
out!
5 1/4 inch
Escaped again. No
floppy disk drive, and a 3.5 inch disk drive. All of that technology is obsolete today, but at the time it was top of the line. Well, except for the tape drive, that was already being phased out completely.
Drawn to the containment grid.
And yes, there was a time when you could literally record programs onto a cassette tape.
Use the proton stream to
The
get
same cassette tape that you would record, you know, music
I'm getting some
on,
interesting
or
PKE
buy music
spikes here.
on, or
Disturbances don't seem to be exclusive to
all
the
that
12th
sort of
floor.
thing.
I'd like the chance to look around the building a little more.
and
Dig up what you can. That little greenie shouldn't cause us too
the
much trouble.
cassette tapes,
Ghostbusters.
particularly that I used for programming, they were unique because they were one-sided to ensure the stability of the programming itself. So it wasn't a double-sided type thing. It was mirrored, meaning it would record the same information twice. And it would do that to
All right, Ace. Get ready.
allow the system to do something kind of like ECC. That's also how the Amiga worked. It had 2 processors and what was called a mirrored system,
And in close quarters.
and it would download the information into itself twice and then check it against itself with 2 different processors. And if there were any conflictions, then it would do the process again until it got 0 conflictions, and then it would start the program. It was actually a really good system. For its time, the Commodore Amiga was one of the top-end computers on the market, and its price certainly
All right, Slimer. You've had
showed
your fun.
that, I
The
guess is the
elevator's
way of
off
putting it.
limits.
It was one of
Come
the
in.
more
I
expensive
think we're stuck in the elevator. We need
PCs
some
that you could
help.
purchase at the time.
Think we're stuck. Well, let's see.
But it also had a lot of things that a lot of
We're
other
stuck?
PCs didn't.
We're
I mean,
stuck?
it had
We're stuck?
one of the best graphic
you
drivers
guys,
you could get on the market.
good
It
with
had one of the best
officially
sound
stuck in the
drivers you could get
elevators?
on the market.
Show of hands.
Other than server
Here it
systems,
comes.
it was the only home-based system that had a dual
Need a hand?
processor
You always
for, like I said, running checks against itself to make sure that the program itself didn't have errors within it. So there was a lot of technology that was being utilized with that PC that was not being utilized with other PCs at the time. and as a result it became pretty popular, especially with people who did programming and video editing and music editing, things like that. One of the main reasons because it was so stable, and the other reason because of the advanced technology that it had on board.
All right, check this out. The trap,
So,
you gotta grab 'em, and to grab 'em,
you know,
use the other half
it is
of
what
the
it is.
proton
And
capture strip.
Ghostbusters back in the day that was designed
That's
for
all there is
this
to it. You just throw this junk
computer
anywhere. We don't stick
was
around.
one of the most advanced games that I can remember on that system, as far as its graphics, gameplay, how big of a game it actually was.
You know, I thought
It
that
was,
guy said Rodriguez bar mitzvah.
Discreet.
It was
Discretion
pretty
is our
advanced,
professional
pretty extensive, pretty large for its time.
Whoa,
Absolutely.
Where did he come from?
And I played a lot of other games, don't get me wrong.
Unless you wanted to
For that
discuss it
system, I
first.
think by the time I got rid of it, I had,
Cadet,
you
go with
know,
Dr.
400 or
Spangler.
500 games
Check out
for
the
it.
angry fisherman.
Maybe a few more. And it varied in the types of games that I had. I mean, there was a wide variety of games that I had for that system. And when I say that system, I mean everything from the Commodore 64 to the Commodore 128, and finally the Commodore
This way. Looks like he's
Amiga.
drifting upstairs.
The 64 is where I got the tape drive. That was the first, cassette tape drive. That was the first drive that I had for any computer. The 128, I got a 5 1/4 inch, and then the Amiga came with a 3.5 inch.
Be the right
So,
person for this job.
Yes, you have
You know,
destroyed
I was
significant
keeping up with
section
current
of the
technologies, I
forest
guess is the way of putting it. And
Just
what I
over 3
liked about the
hours.
Amiga is that you
Your
could
mother
actually
and I are
connect
so proud.
all of those different drives to it,
He's got something. Let's track
and
it down.
it understood and knew how to pull information from all of them without a problem. The operating system was very basic. It was essentially DOS. I mean, it was their own version of it, but it was basically DOS.
First one I've ever seen.
And
Some type of highly focused anthropomorphic animator. An entity which attracts
as a
familiar objects
result,
to itself so it can
it
materially
had
manifest
very
its range.
simple inputs, and you could pull up what those
Generating a
inputs
field
needed
of
to be
attraction
for
so
the
strong that
different
it's able to reassemble its components.
kinds of programs that you put into it.
Keep tearing it down.
I know that I'm talking a lot about, old technologies here, and not really getting into the game, but I just wanted to give some background,
Wrangle it away.
so that you can understand what my history with the Ghostbusters games are. And this particular game, which was made for the PlayStation 3, was the last Ghostbusters game that I ever purchased.
Let's go see if we can find us a shortcut. You with me?
I never watched Ghostbusters 2016 or any of the ones after that,
And clothesline fresh.
whether they were good or not. And the main reason for that is because I didn't want to give these people who blatantly hated me and said the fact that they hated me over and over and over again money to continue creating entertainment, as they call it, to berate and
I wanted to test these first, but since we're waiving that
go
safety
after
step today
me
anyway,
and
you should
continue
be
to
aware that I
create
modified the neutrono wand, which normally releases the particle
agenda
strength.
pushing,
Wow.
agenda pursuing and pushing merchandise
Christmas before Halloween this year.
that I don't agree with. I don't agree with their ideology. I don't agree with their beliefs. I don't agree with what they're pushing. Because it is the opposite of what they continuously say in these fake news media and across all of these supposed gaming outlets that inject their ideology and politics into everything. They claim that what they're doing is one thing. Oh, we're, about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And they're not about any of those things. Their diversity is, Black Girl Gamers,
Is he looking for something
a company
or
of
someone?
100% black people that doesn't hire white people. Disney, same thing. We don't hire straight white people. Period.
Authorities are doing everything they can to
Inclusion,
quell the panic and
only
maintain
if you
order.
think exactly
It
as they
is
do.
madness
If you
out
don't,
here.
well,
The
you're a
Stay
horrible,
Puft
evil,
Marshmallow
racist
Man,
bigot.
star of the popular
Period.
children's television show,
End
is
of discussion.
on a rampage.
That's not
This
very
is not the
inclusive.
Stay Puft we've come
And
to
as far
love.
as equity,
Fortunately, the Ghostbusters have
reparations,
tried to put everything back to normal.
the only equity that they want to see from white people is all of their wealth taken away and given to people who didn't earn it. That's not equity, people. And that's kind of the point. What they claim, what they say they're trying to do, is a lie. All you need to do is look at what they're actually doing and what they've done.
Easy now, miss.
And the
Just
truth
relax.
is the
No sudden
opposite of
movements.
what they
You're
say.
perfectly safe now. Sudden movements! Sudden movements!
Now, getting into the Ghostbusters game itself, the game starts out after the second movie has been created.
Wow,
So,
check it out, kid.
Ghostbusters 1 and
What a view,
Ghostbusters
huh?
2 are in existence.
I love it.
And two of the main characters in both of those movies actually wrote this game. Did they do a great job? Kind of. But it's really a rehash of the two movies. Right, truly, it is. For the most part. I mean, they've added a few lines here and there, but it's a lot of nostalgia, truly. It's a nostalgia game. It's not a game that is set apart in and of itself to
How many can he generate?
be its own thing in any way, shape, or form. It is, like I said, a rehashing of all the things said and done in the first two movies. So, the game starts out where you head back to the hotel that in the first movie they captured Slimer because of an incident that happened at a Gozer exhibit that was getting ready to open, and a energy blast came from that Gozer exhibit, and as it traveled across the city, it weakened the containment system that Slimer was in, allowing him to escape, as well as when you tried to capture him, you ended up injuring the system that contains a lot of other ghosts, allowing a couple of them to escape. And then as you try to capture Slimer there in the
I don't have anything to do with that.
firehouse, as well as the other two ghosts, he ends up escaping the firehouse.
Oh, by
The other
way,
two
you have
ghosts
visitors.
you do end up capturing as part of the tutorial on how to use the mechanics of the game to wear down and then finally capture ghosts and trap them. So, the whole beginning of the game is essentially a tutorial, and I do like tutorials that are done this way, where the gameplay itself is integrated into an explanation as to how the gameplay is to be used. So essentially with the two other ghosts, you fire your blaster, I know that's not what it's called, at the ghosts, your stream, and you wear them down, and there's an indicator to show how weak they become. Once they get down to a quarter or less, you can actually use a capture beam, which captures them. And then once they're captured, you can move them over to where the trap is, and the trap will pull them in. And that's how the game starts out teaching you what you need to do. Then you head out to the hotel, which is the same hotel that Slimer had first been captured in, and that's where he returned to. And then they teach you some more things about some more of your equipment, like how your PKE meter works, and how you can use that to track ghosts, as well as find different types of spiritual material, and then you can scan that spiritual material. And once you've scanned it into the PKE meter,
I've got something.
and when you return to the firehouse, they'll use all that scanned material to upgrade your current equipment and create new equipment.
Ooh, she keeps shushing us.
And this is how the leveling system, if you want to call it that,
I'm
works,
pretty sure Venkman doesn't.
or the RPG mechanics in this game work, however you want to look at that. How you level up in this game is by scanning all the different kinds of
Damn, lost it.
materials or effects that ghosts leave
readings are off
behind
the
in their
charts.
wake.
And I'll have to make new charts.
Eventually, you end up having to
Now listen.
capture a
This place is
lot of
reading like a
different
psychic
ghosts
pressure cooker.
inside this
Everybody stick close together. What was that?
hotel. And some of the ghosts are able to alter the inside of the hotel drastically
Here,
to make it look like it's, you know, deep under the water
Okay, so much for staying
in
together.
some
Now
sort
plan
of
this
cave
out.
system. And there's a bunch of underwater creatures that live there, even though none of it's actually real. It's being created by ghosts. And then eventually you track that same ghost down to the kitchen, and it's able to collect a bunch of the materials within the kitchen itself to protect itself from your blasters, and you have to slowly destroy the different kitchen accessories,
Mind the paper cuts.
like ovens and things like that, that it's using to protect itself. You have to destroy those and weaken it to the point where you can drive the ghost out of this thing. It's your first boss battle is what it really is. And then you can capture that ghost and capture it, and then you go after Slimer and you destroy an entire room in the effort of capturing it. And then after you capture it, of course, you know, just like in the first movie, they get very upset with you for destroying their dining room to capture this apparition.
What are they saying?
And then you head back to the firehouse, and while you're there, of course, the mayor shows up, and Peck shows up. And the mayor tells you that you're going to be working with Peck to make sure that you are following the laws and things to this effect. And the mayor tells him that he can't shut down the Ghostbusters, because if the Ghostbusters cease to exist, then so does Peck's job, and he'll be fired for trying to do so. So they kind of need each other, is the emphasis put forward by the mayor.
You got that right.
And then afterwards, of course, Peck leaves and tells them that he needs to be informed of wherever they're going whenever they go anywhere.
These rooms are packed with rare
And they get
valuable
a call out to
Okay, she's in here. Lead on.
take
No
down
noise.
a ghost in the city. And the ghost in the city is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man again.
No, I saw the support
And
logo.
Bankman has a new capturing device that's mounted to the top of the ambulance, which he believes will be powerful enough to actually capture the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Not much longer. This one's ready for
And
the
this is where you start to run into different types of apparitions. Gargoyles, where you don't actually capture them, but you smash them into the ground, and that breaks them apart so that they're no longer gargoyles. And then you have
Oh boy.
marshmallow dogs, if you want to call them that you just need to pop with your
Creepy.
blaster beam. And once they're popped, you don't have to worry about capturing those either. And it's obvious that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is looking for something. And you head to the building that he is looking through. And when you get inside the building, you find a woman who you met earlier on an elevator. who was staying at the hotel that you were at, and this woman happens to have been at the Gozer exhibit when the energy blast occurred, and she's obviously connected to all of this somehow, but they don't know how. And of course, you know, you try to get her out of the building and that fails, so you go to the roof, and once you're on the roof,
That's your cue, killer. Go get him.
the new guy, which is you, gets knocked over the edge, and the other guys hold you up by some lines to ensure that you don't fall to your death, and then you fight the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. This is boss 2. And it involves basically all the different mechanics that you've been given so far. You have a burst fire mode that you have to use, you have a stream mode that you have to use, and you have to constantly be going back and forth between the two. Capture mode, don't bother, because this thing's way too big for you to use a capture beam on. And once you've fought through it, and enough rounds of the different things that it tosses your way, it'll eventually fall off the building itself and splatter against the ground, and that's how you defeat that boss. And Bateman was never able to get underneath it with the Ghostmobile quickly enough to capture it. Instead, it just ended up splattering all over everything. Regardless, I mean, it's supposed to add into a bit, a joke that all the guys make toward Benjamin. Is it Benjamin or Egon? I think it's Egon that's driving the Ghostmobile. I'm horrible with names, people, so forgive me for mixing them up. But I believe it is Egon that's actually down in the Ghostmobile. Regardless, the next place that you're supposed to go to is to go check out this Gozer exhibit, but before you can, you end up stopping off at the library, and when you get there, of course, there's a whole new chapter of this game to go through.
Actually, we are back in the public library.
And
the dimensional membrane must be extremely thin here.
of course, you'll learn more about the game. You'll get, you know, more abilities,
Yes,
more
wants to add to his collection.
things
He's
to that
probably not
effect.
too happy about us taking the Gozerian
It's not a bad
coordinates
game.
with us.
It's pretty enjoyable, actually. There are aspects of it that I have skipped over, and I skipped over it deliberately because those are the parts of this game that I do not enjoy, and I don't think needed to be there at all in order to make this game enjoyable.
He's right behind me.
But regardless, it is what it is, and like I said, for the most part, the game is playable and it's enjoyable, as long as you just ignore the parts that aren't. Alright, so as soon as you go into the library, you get introduced to a new beam that's been added to your arsenal, and this new beam type solidifies certain enemies so that you can break them apart, rather than just popping them or things to that effect, or slamming them to the ground. And then you start making your way through the library, and you go after the, what they call the Gray Librarian, which is the librarian that was in the first movie. And then they add some lore to it, and they say that this librarian was killed by a person who not only killed her, but killed several dozen others to cover up the crime, or a dozen others to cover up the crime, something like that.
They're all connected to Shandor.
And his crime was using her to gain access to very old books, and then stealing those old books from the library. Eventually, as you make your way through the library, trying to contain and defeat the librarian, a doorway opens to another dimension,
Is that so?
and you have to travel through that dimension to escape the library. And as you do so, eventually you end up having to capture the ghost that had killed the librarian in order to escape the alternate dimension of the library itself. And then even when you think you've made it back to the library itself, you still haven't. What used to be boss battles are now creatures that you fight on the regular. They are easier to defeat at least. But what was once a boss battle is no more. Now they're just more powerful enemies that you take on. And eventually you escape the library altogether, just to find that there's some sort of odd runes on the wall of the library, and one of the points on that rune goes dark as a result of what you've done in the library itself.
Careful. I'll get to security.
And then you make your way back to the firehouse to learn from the woman that one of those runes is something that she's seen on the regular within the Sumerian writings that she's been studying. I believe it's Sumerian. I'm horrible with names. Anyway, within the writings that she's been studying. And you find that there's connections between an old architect who is obviously into devil worship, as well as a lot of the elites of New York that were also into devil worship. And they had done some pretty horrible things to women that were being taken to a shelter, and they used those women in experiments and rituals and all sorts of horrible things. And then eventually you make your way to the exhibit at the museum that you're not supposed to be at, because that's where the mayor is holding a party for a bunch of elites. And the lady that you're talking with has been invited to this event, but you have not. So you have to sneak into the event by using the back entrance or the side entrance. And the assistant director of the museum is the one who lets you in, at least unlocks the door. And then after you enter, you find that he's missing, so you go looking for him. Eventually you find him stuffed away in a box, and you release him from his being captured. And then a spirit possesses Bankman, I believe. And you have to use a new device that you've been given. You were given it in the library to nullify black slime, or dark slime. I believe they call it black slime. And it also works well to unpossess people who have become possessed. So you spray him down with a bunch of this, slime from your backpack, and that drives the entity out of him. And then you start slowly working your way through the museum, capturing and destroying entities as you go. Eventually you make it to where the party is occurring, and the girl that you've been working with ends up getting possessed and kidnapped by one of the spirits, and the spirits start to attack the guests. Of course, Peck ends up getting possessed as well, and you save him from his possession, and he gets upset with you for doing so because it's somehow your fault that this happened, as far as he's concerned. And you continue your way through the museum, going after the girl that's been kidnapped. And you make your way through the different exhibits, and you've got to take on different apparitions along the way. And basically you use all the different devices that you've been given up to this point. You collect more samples, you take out different apparitions. You, like I said, make your way through the exhibits, and the mannequins or dolls that are in those exhibits get animated and start to attack you, as well as each other, depending on what exhibit you're in.
Well, I guess that explains it.
Sir, there's no need to fear.
Basically
These are just
mayhem,
shadows, echoes of actual
a lot of
ghosts. They
mayhem.
can't hurt you. Come with us,
But
sir. We can lead you to
good
safety.
fun, either way. It's an interesting story, sort of. I mean, like I said, it's just this is absolutely a nostalgia game. Everything that's been said and done in the two movies is repeated here for you, in one way or another. They may be different circumstances, but they repeat the same one-liners all the way through it. It doesn't make it a bad game, it is what it is. There's some decent graphics in this game, there's some decent cutscenes in this game. Like I said, the story is not
Odd.
horrible, but it's
coming
not
from
great
everywhere and
either.
nowhere. Impossible to
And,
get a significant fix. Ray, come in. Are you there?
Of course, there's more still yet to come in this interesting story,
We had a close
interesting
contact.
game.
I've got some more information on the
Um,
Spider Witch ghost.
The game itself,
Manager says
surprisingly,
authorities
is
never found her,
it's decently long.
bodies were
I'm
hung
not going
from
to say
the
that
ceiling.
it's
They were
super
drained of
long,
blood
but it's
and
not.
dragged around. He says the victims
It's not the
were found in a
70,
pretty
80
bad
hours
state.
or 100 plus hours that I would prefer a game to be.
Furniture was hacked, chewed, and
But
crushed and
still,
piled
if
in
you've
a corner
never
like a
played
giant
it,
nest. She seems
you'll
to have
spend quite a bit of
vandalized the
time
room
with it.
badly, too.
There's quite a
I don't
few
want to be hung from the
areas
ceiling
where
and drained
you
of
can,
blood.
die, but this game isn't punishing in that way. You just go back to before the battle and you start the battle over again. Or you go back before a particular area that you entered and you start that area over again.
What was the
So it's
Spider
not
Witch's
too
room number?
punishing. It's
After her spree, it
it's
was locked up until about
relatively
5 years ago when we
forgiving
remodeled.
as you play through.
Hear that? Room 1221.
But there are absolutely definitely places where you can die relatively easily, especially if you move to the left when you should have moved to the right, because then you get hit with everything that you're supposed to be dodging. Alright, so while you're in the museum, eventually you save the guests and the mayor, as well as Peck. And then the mayor tells you to figure out what's going on. And after they leave, you destroy a monolith, which was a major part of the exhibit. And after doing so, a staircase appears, leading down, of course, and you head down underneath the museum itself, way down underneath the
Trapping
museum.
the ghosts inside.
And you fight your way through a bunch of enemies. You unlock a few secret doors, or find a few secret doors. And eventually you make it to the boss that's under the museum. You get a new ability, which is to shoot little red balls, or not red, yellow, little yellow balls.
Ray, since you're the most excited,
And you have to shoot those little yellow balls at the yellow light on the
I
boss.
thought I was making a nice gesture. You giving me the suspicious look.
After you defeat the boss,
Drop it instantly. Let's get going.
there's a mandala
Enjoys rushing
that
headlong
appears
towards the
again
death more than
at
this
the
one.
museum. So at this point, you've seen this same mandala appear twice.
The Shandors owned this island
Once
for
at the
generations.
library,
The castle was
and
built in
then at
1860s.
the
Ivo Shandor used it as a refuge, a lab,
museum,
and a temple for he and other cult
and
members to work.
the runes within a couple of points on the mandala disappear after you defeat the boss in each of those areas. So you head back to your firehouse, and while you're at the firehouse, one of the team members for the Ghostbusters realizes that the mandala isn't
I was seriously
a
cramping up
star
in there.
chart, but it matches up with a map of Manhattan, and two of the points that you've been to match up perfectly with the library and the museum. And then you see the other 2 points, and you realize that one of those points is the hotel that you've already been to, and the other point is in the middle of the Hudson River. Well, not quite in the middle of it, but it's in the river itself, which the group does find a little odd. But they decide to head to the hotel to see if there's any,
Thank God you're here.
What's going on, Janine? Where's Alyssa?
well, I guess you
She's
could say to
gone.
make
They took
sure
her. 1 minute everything was
that
fine, the next it was
3 out of the
chaos.
4 points on the
Ghosts flying
mandala
everywhere.
are
Janine, slow
accurate
down. Start from the
to
beginning.
the map itself.
Well,
So when you
absolutely,
get there,
this
you
one was
find
one of
that
the heels
the
on my favorite
hotel
pair of
has
pumps
been
broke,
shut
unless this
down,
was out of my favorite tea. You know how I love
and
my
it
chamomile.
seems to
Well,
be
and
empty
Okay.
until you
Maybe not
find
beginning. Start where things went
one of
haywire a
the
little.
hotel employees there who
Okay. Somebody jumped
apparently
from
came
behind,
back to get
and
some
before
stuff,
I passed out, I heard Alyssa struggling and yelling, "Now!"
even
The
though
last thing
the
I
city
remember
is
was the
in
screams of the
kind of
dead
a state of
and
chaos.
echoing in my brain.
So I thought there was a man's
And
escape from Rikers.
he says that he's tried to leave the hotel on several occasions and in several different ways, but he's been barred from
I
exiting
always
it.
knew that Peck
And
was
that's when the
definitely a credit
Ghostbusters
card,
realize that
but I never pegged
they
him
are
as a
now
real
trapped in the
cultist.
hotel as well.
But where did he take her? And
So,
where are all the ghosts? 'Cause no
They
offense,
tell the
but if all the
hotel
ghosts never
employee
caused
that
this
they're
escape, I'm clocking out.
looking for a particular room because that's where one of their clients was in a trance headed toward before they woke up from said trance and started running away from that room.
Well, hello there.
And the hotel employee decides to tell them a story about how that room a long time ago was rented by a Black Widow, a woman who would entrance men and bring them back to her hotel room and then kill them.
From the mandala and the escaped ghost is building up to a flashpoint. We don't have much
And
time.
about the time he finishes his story, you see the after images of this Black Widow talking to a man and convincing him that it's a good idea to come back to her room. So you can't use the stairs because the stairs have been destroyed, and you can't use the elevators because there's no power.
Well, I guess we're going in there.
So you make your way into the basement and you start up the backup generators. Once the backup generators are running, you can make your way back toward the elevators and then up to the 12th and 13th floor.
Beat him down! They've got to capture Street!
There's not actually a 13th floor. So they skip 13 and go to 14, but it's still the 13th floor. I mean, that whole idea of we just won't call it the 13th floor is pretty ridiculous, and it's always been ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Just because you don't call it something that it actually is doesn't mean that it's not that. But whatever. Eventually the guys on the 12th floor explore end up discovering the room that's been hidden because of all the changes that have happened to the hotel. And inside that room, they find that the room itself is part of a different dimension. And as you work your way through the room, you fight off a bunch of spiders, and eventually you end up fighting a Black Widow, quite literally Spider Woman, as the main boss. And when you finally defeat her, of course, another one of the runes on the rune map disappear, and you see that there is a rune there at the hotel as well. And then you guys all collect your stuff and you head back toward the firehouse. Well, this time when you get to the firehouse, you find that the containment system for all of the ghosts that you've been collecting for years has been destroyed. So all of the ghosts have been freed. Or no, I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. You decide to get on a boat at this point and head into the Hudson River to see if you can find that point on the map that is in the river. As you're exploring the Hudson River, a entire island with a castle and everything else springs up out of the river from nowhere, and it's the same guy who built the hotel and a few other buildings that he remodeled in the city, Shandor, is the guy who apparently owned this entire island and built everything on it. And of course you make your way through the island and the castle, and as you do so, you eventually come to a room with interesting machinery that they say is trying to align dimensions with each other to create a stable doorway between these dimensions. And even though you end up destroying and shutting down the machinery, it doesn't prevent a doorway from opening and a boss from entering into this dimension. And then you have to take out that boss too. Then you go back to the firehouse to find that the containment system has been destroyed. You blame Peck for it, because he's done it before. But in truth, you don't know who actually did this, and you find that your client, the woman that you've been working with this whole time, is she's related to the Shandors. And even though she didn't know that for, when she was hired, by Peck, by the way, you're pretty sure that her blood relation to the Shandors is what kicked all of this insanity off. Regardless, she's been kidnapped. The containment system for all the ghosts have been destroyed. And when you check out the news, you find that there's a huge disturbance and problem happening inside Central Park. So you head off to Central Park to see what's going on, because once you destroyed Shandor's Island, you thought that this was over, and instead another place pops up in Central Park. So you have to make your way through Central Park and unlock different locks and things of this effect. Eventually you make it to the center of the disturbance. You fight the new god that wants to dominate the world. After defeating it, you essentially have freed the mayor of the possession that he's been under for quite some time. You free Peck, who was going to be a sacrifice, as well as the woman that you've been working with that was a blood relation of Shandor. So you save all the peoples, you destroy the god, you shut down the dimensional portal, and that's basically the end of the game. So it's not a bad game, like I said, but it is an absolutely 100% nostalgia game. There's nothing new really in this game at all. Most of the lines are pulled word for word from the first two movies. And like I said, it was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramses, but I think all they did really was just pull the scripts that they had from the first two movies and start pulling lines from those scripts, to be quite honest with you. So very simple to create the writing for this particular game. Nonetheless, there were a lot of people who helped out, some especially at the time pretty popular actors and actresses that decided to be the voice talent for the game, including the main actors for the first two movies. You had, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramses, and Ernie Hudson. So they got the actual actors to voice act this game, which, that's pretty cool, I guess. Anyway.
We eat gods for breakfast. I'm deactivating the cross-stream governor. I never thought I'd say this again. Cross the streams!
We eat gods for breakfast?
Too much, you think?
No, I liked it.
I've got you.
Get me down from here.
Please,
New guy.
I'm begging you, let
You're
me down!
This is not the last you will see of me.
I'm going to call that my rant for the day. I hope that you enjoy the rest of yours. If you could hit the like, subscribe, rumble, follow buttons, all that does help. And I will talk to you later.